Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats, weekly podcast episode number 51. I am your host, Dan Matson, also known as Wooden Boat Dan, and this is the world's very first podcast, fully 110% dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden boats of all sizes and shapes and ages. Welcome to the show today, folks. Great to have you. We're in for another action-packed episode today. Kind of like watching Superman, you never know what's going to happen. This week's featured segment is an interview I did with John Dean and Andrew Washburn, who work at the Center for Wooden Boats at CAMA Beach, which is on Camano Island in Washington State. If you're not familiar with that location and that facility there, I recommend you Google that and you can find out about it. It's an old fishing resort that was started in the 30s, run by a family for 6 or 7 decades and closed in the late 80s. Then it reopened in 2008. Center for Wooden Boats and Washington State Parks reopened the facility, refurbished the cabins, refurbished the boathouse. It's really a cool place, lots of history. It's a really fun interview, so I recommend you stick around for that. I would love it if you would connect with me. You can do so via email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest if you look for Wooden Boat Dan there. You can subscribe to my e-news list. I send out a monthly short newsletter with tips, tricks, resources, fun information about Hooked on Wooden Boats. And if you want to do that, you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. And that's a fun way to connect there. You can send me pictures and stories, and I also have a voicemail feedback hotline. That number is 424-261-2360. I would love it if you would call that number and leave comments, questions, fun wooden boat stuff. That would be really cool. I can play that during the podcast. Again, that number is 424-261-2360. This past week, I worked on my Sassafras canoe, probably a total of 3 hours. I'm down to the point now where the boat's basically built. I've got two coats of epoxy on everything. And now I have the tedious job of sanding down the epoxy with some 80 grit paper. Well, here's the plan. On the hull, I'm going to sand with 80 grit. I'm going to do 2 coats of undercoater from Interlux. I forget the name of it, Precoat or something like that. Then I'm going to do 2 coats of white Interlux Bright Side paint. And on the inside of the boat and the gunnels and decks, I'm going to do 4 to 5 coats of varnish. Right now I've got about 80 hours into the boat at this point in time and about $500. So I think I'm doing pretty good on the dollar point. I think the 80 hours is a little bit steep, but part of that is I did end up spending a lot of time on the decks. I think I mentioned that in a previous episode where I trimmed the decks with Purple Heart, and it was pretty tedious, tricky work, and I didn't mix my epoxy properly once, and I had to redo some stuff. But anyway, the boat's coming along. So much for my May 2012 deadline. But if I can get it finished this year, that'll be the first time I've built a boat in less than a year, which is pretty cool. So, no wooden boat tip of the week this week, but we'll have one hopefully next week. And I do have some listener feedback here. I got an email from David Swain. David lives in the UK, and here's what he has to say. It's a pretty fun email. Hi, Dan. I love your podcast, and I've been a regular listener here in the UK ever since you began. And I have to say, over time, your episodes have gotten better and better, but they were brilliant to start with. I'm building a 40-foot stitch and glue liveaboard tugboat, motor sailor, plans by Morten Olsen of Norway. Here in the UK, boat building and owning isn't as popular as it is in the USA and Canada, and as a result, building supplies and lumber are not as easily accessible as over the water. If you're interested, I'll send you some photos so you can see the process from her build, from paper plans to her present stage, finishing the hull prior to rollover. Anyway, keep going. You're doing a fantastic job. I look forward every week to downloading your show and listening to you while I'm cleaning windows. Greatest of respect to you and your family. Keep the varnish side up and the barnacled side down, as you say, and hopefully I'll hear from you sometime in the future. Cheers, Dave Swain. Dave, thanks for that kind note. I love getting feedback back like that. That's what keeps me going. This is really fun stuff for me, and I'm glad it's really fun stuff for other people. And Dave, by the way, I don't see you on my email subscription list, so sign up there, would you? Okay, very good. Thank you. September 7th through 9th, which is this coming Friday through Sunday, is the 36th annual Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival, which is an absolute blast. I've been going to this festival since sometime in the 90s. And I'm going to be there all weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And actually on Sunday, I'm going to be giving a presentation at 10:45 in the Discovery Room of the Red Building of the Northwest Maritime Center. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to show some photographs of some of the boats that our family had growing up as a kid, mostly wooden boats. I'm going to show some photos of my great-grandfather who came from Sweden and some of his boat building endeavors, and going to show a video interview that I did July 2nd at the Center for Wooden Boats Festival, and it's going to be a really fun time. I'm going to raffle off some Hooked on Wooden Boats merchandise. I would love to see you there. So if you can make it, 10:45 Sunday in the Discovery Room at the Northwest Maritime Center. Also, during the festival, I'm going to be doing quite a few interviews for future podcasts, and I'm really excited. I have an interview scheduled with Lynn and Larry Pardee during the festival of offshore sailing fame. They're authors. Most people in the sailing world have read their books or heard their presentations. They're amazing people that have built some of their own wooden vessels and sailed them around the world for years and years. And they've sailed motorless, and really fun couple. So I'm super excited for that interview. And I'm also very excited to be interviewing John Harris, who's the owner of CLC Boats in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm really looking forward to sitting down with John and doing an interview and talking about their boats and about John's history with boats. They've got some really cool stuff there. I believe their website is clcboats.com. So you want to be sure and tune in later in September for those interviews. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay, we're going to move on to the interview that I did at CAMA Beach, which actually I just did this one yesterday. It's a very fresh one, really fun. It's about 35 minutes in length with John Dean and Andrew Washburn of the CAMA Beach Center for Wooden Boats. Take it away, guys. Okay, it is September 3rd, 2012. I am sitting with Andrew Washburn and John Dean, both with the Center for Wooden Boats, and we're at the CAMA Beach Center on Camino Island. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks.
Very good to have you here. It's a beautiful sunny day here, and lots of activity this weekend, Labor Day weekend. John, let's start with you. You're the incoming manager here at CAMA Beach. So tell me a little bit about your background with boats and how you kind of got involved with the Center for Wooden Boats.
Yeah, well, I think when growing up, I always messed around boats with my dad and different lakes in California, but I didn't actually get to own my own boat till the year 2000, and I bought a McGregor water ballast boat for family and be able to go camping out in Lake Chelan, and we go up in the San Juans when we can, and just it's a great weekend boat. But what I got hooked on wood boats was meeting Dick Wagner years ago when I was working at the local community newspaper, and he was approaching CAMA Beach and state parks for a partnership, and actually I guess in those days he was just starting it really around 2000 and I'm going to say 2001, 2002 in there somewhere. So he came to the newspaper, invited me down to Lake Union, and I just fell in love with the place. And I always thought afterwards, being there, that it wasn't so much the boats, but some of the people that I met down there that really hooked me too. It's there's just a great bunch of people associated with this organization that I was attracted to. But I've been working up here as a park aide here at CAMA Beach State Park for last year, and when I got in there, Andrew asked me if I'd like to serve on the board, and I said, "Oh yeah, sure." So I was on the board of directors for Center for Wood and Boats last year, and I got a little bit more intimately involved and familiar with the organization. But the more I saw, the more I loved, and then the executive director, Betsy Davis, called me one day and said, "Would you be interested in managing the place up at CAMA?" And I thought, dream job. She said, "Well, you can think about it for a while." And I said, "No, I don't need to think about it." I never saw that coming. So that was a pleasant surprise. So I'm really learning more about wood boats and handling boats than I ever have in the past. I think what my job is more marketing, public outreach, and we're trying to make Center for Wood and Boats and CAMA Beach State Park more of a regional place to attract more boaters here, attract more people, and just let them know about it. The park's only been open in, I guess, 2008 it opened, and still people live on Camino Island just down the road and haven't been here yet. So we're still in a discovery phase for the people out there to come and get in a boat.
Yeah, very cool.
Learn about it.
And you just had an event this weekend. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was what started out to be a big dream of going sailing all the way around Camino Island. That was kind of the kernel brainstorm thought, and then it got scaled down to a course here in front of CAMA Beach State Park and all the cabins.
Oh, okay.
I think we had 12 boats participating, and it wasn't about who was going to come in first and second. It was more of a trial run for us here to see how that might work, and I think it's going to grow to hopefully a regional, maybe a national event over time. At least we've had secret conversations about how to make it more of a regional event. But everybody had a lot of fun. We had a dinner last night, award ceremony, and people got to stay in cabins here on the beach, and it was total success as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Are you from the Northwest originally, John?
No, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Berkeley. Went to a Catholic seminary, thought I was going to be a priest, and decided that probably wasn't as good an idea as I thought it was. So I've done marketing since then, working with disabled people and then journalism.
Okay.
But I've been here 30 years, so this feels like
Camino Island,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Very cool. So, Andrew, let's tell me a little bit about your background with boating and how you got hooked on this whole thing, man.
Well, I grew up in just north of Chicago and grew up mostly canoeing on rivers and lakes and a little bit of sailing on Lake Michigan and teaching sailing as a summer camps when I was high school and college. But really wound up at the Center for Wood and Boats actually through well, when I got hired to be the manager at CAMA Beach State Park, it was Betsy Davis, the executive director, told me there was one thing on my background that stood out, and that is I spent a summer managing the kayak rental stand at Point Defiance at Owens Beach at Point Defiance.
Down in Tacoma?
Yeah.
Oh,
for
really?
For Don's Rusted Market down there. And I had just come off some contract jobs doing museum work, which is what my passion and background was, and was looking for something and walked in and got a job. Honestly, it was mostly selling hot dogs, but when I got hired, Betsy said, well, you've got a museum background and you know a thing or two about renting boats in saltwater environment. So, but really getting into maritime history was also in San Francisco when I went to graduate school for museum studies. San Francisco is a great city. They got great museums. They don't really have a history museum per se, other than the San Francisco National Maritime Historical Park, and so I ended up volunteering and interning down there, and that's how I got really interested in maritime history.
Oh, okay.
I came in three years ago, and we had operated half of a season in 2008, and I came in 2009. And
here at CAMA Beach.
Here at CAMA Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a steep learning curve for us. We tried just the same programs, the same boats down and don't work up here at Saratoga Passage as they do down on Lake Union. Totally
it's
different environment.
Mm-hmm.
Also a different community that wants to do different things on the water. But I think what we've seen over the last couple of years as the popularity of CAMA and CWB at CAMA Beach in the sort of broader regional audiences, you see a really cool mixing of people who want to just get out on the water and to go fishing or crabbing, as well as with events like Sail Cam Isle, real wooden boat enthusiasts and sailing enthusiasts that come out. It's really been a cool thing to see that blending of your non-traditional sort of wooden boat enthusiasts with just sort of local sportsmen. That's really interesting. That's one of the things I absolutely love about CAMA Beach too, and the Center for Wooden Boats is we cater to people from all walks of life here, from brand new boaters to people who've lived in Washington their whole life and remember the days when there were resorts and boathouses like CAMA Beach all over the place, to recent immigrant families that just want to get out on the water and do some crabbing or fishing, and how they all sort of get brought into this sort of mix of visitors here. It's great.
So have you built some boats yourself, Andrew?
I have not. I don't have a background in boat building. I've, over the last 3 years, participated in a lot of, assisted in a lot of boat building, particularly with kids, but I don't really have the patience for that for that sort of thing. Maybe one day here when I get a little bit of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now today's your last day here at CAMA, and you're going back down to Lake Union Center for Wooden Boats there. So tell me about your new position with the Center for Wooden Boats.
Well, I'd like to think of this as my last day in charge at CAMA. To me, the thought of leaving CAMA is not
a good thought.
We're not going to let that happen.
So, my new position is across campuses, so I'll be in the future I'll be working based out of South Lake Union, but also working with very closely with John as part of a project that we got a partial funding through a grant through the National Trust for Historic Preservation to enhance the interpretation in the boathouse. So we called the project Creating Context at CAMA, and it was really to answer two very different questions that we often got over the last 3 years here, and that was, what is this place when someone walks into the boathouse?
Yeah.
And on the other side of the spectrum is, I've never been here before, but this place reminds me of a place my dad used to take me fishing in Edmonds or Mukilteo or Tacoma, and so trying to create some interpretation that answers both of those questions. What is the CAMA Beach Boathouse? Because it's so unlike other places. You just don't see those sorts of places.
Yeah, right.
Left. and so and also to interpret the to help people remember those other places that are very important, that used unique boats, many of them handcrafted right here in the Pacific Northwest and during the heyday of the Boathouse era. So, but that small grant to create the interpretation here also we've been able to leverage that to gain some funding to do some exhibits and research that will lead to some programming down in Seattle as well this winter.
So you're going to be doing some research into the history of this area and CAMA Beach itself?
Thankfully, a lot of the research into CAMA has been done, but there's a number of other places that, CAMA is unique in that it's whole, and not only are the cabins, the boathouses, even the boats are still here. There was hundreds, 175 or so places just like this all over Western Washington that aren't as well. Yeah, we've got a cool map from 1956 that lists 176 resorts and urban boathouses like Ray's Boathouse.
Yeah.
And today, between CAMA Beach and Point Defiance down in Tacoma and a couple of places out on the peninsula, there isn't that same sort of boathouse operation rental fleet.
So, is there any other place like CAMA right now that's kind of stayed in existence, or is this kind of it in the state?
That's I've been sort of haven't delved completely into the research yet.
Okay.
There isn't one that I've been told about so far. There's a great spot over one of the most popular boathouse and resorts. Smaller one was over at Point No Point, and it's owned by Fish and Wildlife now. And some of the original cabins are still there, and one of the original boathouses. But that's soon to be redeveloped and into basically just a modern boat launch.
Oh, really?
So we'll lose that little piece of history. So that's one of the reasons why we want to.
Okay, so you're going to be researching places like that, huh? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds really fun.
Yeah. Just so people understand that CAMA is unique.
Yeah,
but it's also a symbol of a much as an era, a very this is just what people did for vacation.
Yeah,
the great thing is people can still do it here.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. So maybe you or John could tell me a little bit more about the history of CAMA Beach and what's been going on here.
Oh, yeah. I followed a lot of it when I was a newspaper guy, and I don't know specifics, but I know in a general sort of way this place was built in 1933 and 34, 35, probably all those 3 years. And back in those days, there were auto courts, they called them, all around the sound, like we were just talking about. And so the family...
auto courts?
Auto courts, yeah.
As an A-U-T-O.
Yeah, your the automobile courts. And you see old photos of the place. The old cars are parked here next to the cabins, and I presume they put in a gas station that's still here, a gravity-fed gas pump from the 30s, because there probably wasn't a gas station on Camino Island in those days, and so people would travel all day up Highway 99, I guess it would be in those days, and drive up here, but they needed gas to get back home. So it was a very popular resort at that time, but most recently, I think it remained open as a private resort up till about 1979, as I recall. 1989.
I think, but from what I understand, is that those period probably from the early 70s until that, it sort of the usable part of the resort sort of shrank as buildings deferred maintenance caused some of the buildings to deteriorate.
So it's kind of shrinking at that time.
Right, but but the interesting thing is that it remained open.
And it was a family-owned business, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it was in 33 and 34, a fellow by the name of Stradley. He was a property owner and I think a hotel owner down in Seattle, purchased the property here, which was an old logging camp. It had been logged out. It was a logging camp that was called Camp 9 from the English Logging Company, which there's a park on the island here called English Boom, which is named after the logging company.
Really?
Yeah, and actually, you can still walk around the woods here and see the springboard stumps, as well as one of the coolest cultural resources in the park is the old entrance road, which is the same exact grade, and it actually is the old skid road that they used to drag logs out of the woods down into the water so they could tow them around. But that's the fact that it remained open while all the other resorts, were just over 20 on Camano Island alone, that from the mid 60s to, but basically they were all gone by the early 70s. But
was that with kind of the decline in the fishing industry, the recreational fishing had kind of dropped off, and just people were doing different things, or what do you think?
I think there's a wide variety of answers there. I think the popularity of these resorts like this, one of the first reasons they began to decline, I think, is private boat ownership. You have in the mid '60s, you could get boats relatively cheaply. You had a car powerful enough to tow your own boat. So you didn't really need to come to a place like CAMA, whose sort of one of the main features was being able to rent a boat. But I think also declining popularity of fish, which sort of mirrored declining populations of fish.
Right. So the family closed the place in '89, and then what happened over the next 10, 15, 20 years, I guess? Just kind of sat here?
Boy, I can remember the two women that inherited the property, Karen Hamalainen and Sandra Worthington. I can remember them coming into my office, and they were just giving me a heads up. They were going to approach the state of Washington and make an offer to try to get state parks to adopt the park, or not adopt it, to buy or be the recipient of a major gift. And I think that probably went into I think they thought it was going to be a couple of years, 3-year project. It probably went on for, I'd lose track, maybe 10 years. It seemed like I was writing headlines that the CAMA Beach State Park will open in 1995, and then next year you do it again, and it was a issue for the state legislature and of course state of Washington, just whether or not they wanted to get into that kind of a business. I think they were breaking new grounds, moving from the campsite model to running a resort. So it took a little while to get that deal done. And I'm not clear on the details of the arrangement between the family and state parks, but I know that they donated quite a bit of property here, and they also formed a foundation, CAMA Beach Foundation, which has paid for our new conference center, CAMA Center, that's up here on the hill. It's a traditional Northwest lodge, a big stone fireplace, and a public restaurant in there, and we have weddings and conferences held there.
That's a beautiful building.
It's a gorgeous place.
Yeah, with a view of the water and everything. That's really cool.
So it's a real success story. Both, everyone, not everyone, but every once in a while, someone will say, well, when you run across the family, thank them for us, because it was a great gift. It's a beautiful piece of property, a lot of history here,
so did this reopen? Center for Wooden Boats was here when it opened with the state parks, or
having gone through some of Dick's old papers, looking at some of the meetings that he attended, I can see his involvement up here in conversations with Sandra and Karen, as well as state parks, going back to the early 90s.
Wow.
It probably didn't happen like this, but I imagine when they opened up the Boathouse and saw 42 of the original fleet just stacked
really
in there,
42 of them.
They must have said, well, what do we do with these? And so they called Dick to come up. There's 41 of the original fleet, most of which were built in 34 here on the island.
Really?
Most of them are, about half of them are simple flat iron skiffs, and the others are a bit more complex.
So they're plank boats. Are there any plywood boats, or are they all plank?
Not in what has been sort of curated as the original fleet.
Okay.
I have a strong feeling that there must have been, over the years, there must have been some other boats, some other plywood boats that were added, but that just didn't hold up over versus the cedar planked boats. Yeah.
So they would rent the skiffs out here to people that would stay at the cabins, and were they rowing those? Did they have little outboards for them? Or
both. They had. They would rent boats without motors, or you could rent a motor. A lot of people, what they did in those days was tie their little Evinrude or Johnson onto the running board of their car and drive up, because you could own a motor pretty easy back in the 30s and 40s. Owning a boat was a whole different thing. We just didn't have galvanized trailers. Just weren't a thing back then, and or a car powerful enough to carry one. Yeah. But a lot of people would bring their own motor, and you'd rent a boat and strap it on the boat, and zoom off.
So who built all these boats that were here originally? Do you know?
Yeah, we do. It was, we're 99% sure. We found one of the volunteers for state parks is found in the Stanwood Area Historical Society in one of the papers, just a short note from 1934 that says Bert Johnson was given the contract from Mr. Stradley to build 35 boats for the new CAMA Beach Resort, and he'll be assisted by his son Eddie, and it was great. We actually were able to. Tina, the interpretive ranger for the park, was able to track down the great-granddaughter, or maybe it was the great-great-granddaughter of Bert Johnson, who she told us he was born in 1866 in Denmark. And so in 1934 he was nearing 80 years old. And we know they had a shop at Onomac Point, which is just up the road a few miles. Yeah. We're not sure if he built them there, or they built them there, or if they built them here.
Were they built out of Doug fir, local Doug fir?
Cedar planks on Doug fir
frames.
Doug fir frames, as far as we've been able to tell.
Yeah. Okay.
But most, actually, the little round bottom skiffs, I think, are all cedar. Probably more cedar than...
Probably local cedar, though?
Oh, yeah, there was something. I'm sure it came from... Probably not from
Washington
the island,
or Oregon, but...
Oh, I'm sure it came from Stanwood. Yeah, somewhere, I'm sure a mill in Stanwood cut it.
Okay,
The island had been kind of logged out, but the logging had moved up the river valleys. And that's one of the reasons it opened up for resorts, because sort of timber companies all pulled out and left these nice cleared patches of land with roads and stuff like that. Yeah.
One of the really great historical features of this park is all those boats were launched on a marine rail system from the boathouse down into the water, and you can see relics of it. The rails are still twisted down there, but the really great thing is that is going to be recreated hopefully next year. Maybe Andrew could probably tell you more. I haven't looked at those plans yet that you sent, but
See, we've been it's been a long
It's a lot of permitting requirements.
Well, a little bit. To back up a little bit, one of the ideas with this Sail of Cam Isle event was to not only bring people from elsewhere to Camano Island to enjoy sailing and boating here at CAMA Beach, but also to get the locals excited about sailing. We're at Camano Island. We were desperately marine facilities challenged. Theres no marina on the island. There's handful of boat launches that are of varying levels of usefulness. But one of when the Center for Wooden Boats first got involved, and as the park was nearing opening, we had identified that we could help solve this problem for the island, and with the help of state parks, put in some great marine facilities here, some mooring buoys, some of which would be available to the public, a restored marine railway, as well as a pier. And so the state had applied for all those permits for all those facilities back right in 2008. And due to, I guess, some of the permitting complications, withdrew those permits.
Really?
And so we've been, for the last couple of years, we've been working with the state to at least acquire the permits for the marine railway and mooring buoys. And the pier would be there's not a whole lot of historical precedence for a pier on this side of the island, although we hope to see that eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But the marine railway, I think, would be
really
a fantastic help, not only operationally, but it would be keeping within the way the resort operated historically.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you are to walk down the beach here on Saratoga Passage, you can see, many even private homeowners still use marine railways to launch their boats.
Yeah.
So we're hoping find out in the next several months whether we'll.
We might get some stuff next year then for buoys and railway.
Yeah, the first challenge is getting the permits, and so the state's really leading the charge on that. And
those are federal permits, are they?
Yeah, basically it'd be they're state and federal. Yeah. So the big one is the Army Corps, getting the Army Corps of Engineers to sign off. Yeah. And one of the things they need is at least sort of a nod in the right direction from the 4 federally recognized Indian tribes that have they're called interested tribes.
Oh.
When it comes to public land in Washington.
Really?
So that's been the process of I've been able to help the region state parks people do some of the consultation and been able to talk to the tribal fisheries and cultural resources people, and to help understand their concerns, which mainly have to do with keeping shellfish and other fish populations healthy and strong here in Saratoga Passage. So, and I feel reasonably confident that we'll get the permits. And then the challenge is raising the money, figuring out those the funding sources that we're going to be able to tap into to build that. It's not a fortune that we're looking at, and that's one of the great things about marine railways. But so we'll certainly be looking to the community for some support for that. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have been volunteers down here or been interested in CAMA Beach and know how hard we struggle just to move boats up and down the beach without a marine railway.
Yeah.
So I think they'll be ready to support.
That would be really cool. So for people listening to this podcast that haven't been here to CAMA Beach, maybe John, you or Andrew could tell us what all is here and what facilities are available to the public, and if you come down here and stay, what you can do, or if you come down for the day, just kind of a good description of what's going on here.
Well, first of all, it is a state park, so it's everyone is welcome to come here. It's not just for people to rent cabins or boats, but there's also day use, certainly in all the parks and certainly here. We've got a variety of cabins that people can rent. The prices range from about $60 a night to $143, depending on how big and whether you have a bathroom and shower in it or whether you're using the communal bathroom and shower. There's some great trails here. We're linked to our sister park, Camino Island State Park, about a mile south of us, and so there's some trails that go out that direction. I think I already mentioned there's the CAMA Cafe and CAMA Center, which is a lodge building. So people, no matter what the weather is, they can come here. They can swirl down into the lodge and sit by the fireplace and read a book or play games and drink coffee. So it's a place for Camino Island, and a place for the region to come in and rent boats, go hiking, just sit on the beach and do nothing. There's probably I always lose track how many cabins we have here, but I think it's 35 or
something.
It's 30, 35 in that neighborhood, and the place is open year-round. It's a great place to come down and storm watch, sit in the cabin. The cabins are right on the beach, maybe about 20 feet away from the
and these are the original cabins that were refurbished a few years ago. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So
everything looks just like it did in the 30s.
It's all very historic looking, isn't it?
Very much so.
Yeah.
It is a historic historical district, and so what you see here is probably what people were doing in the 30s.
Yeah. So tell me about the boat shop over here with the boats in it and stuff. What's going on there?
Well, the Center for Wooden Boats has a lease on 4 different buildings through state parks as part of our partnership agreement. And that includes the Boathouse, which is the large barn-like structure. And really, what you see, it's sort of a multi-purpose building. But what you see largely depends on what season you come down. In the summer, it's a place bustling with activity, getting boats to and from the water, talking to visitors. In the spring or in the fall and winter, we really repurpose the building largely for repair of our fleet. And then in the spring is sort of what it's come to be our sort of youth program season, where we around the spring break time we get a lot of classes that will come up stay for 4 or 5 days, and
boat building classes and stuff like that.
We'll build a boat with, we'll take a group of, there'll be a group of 15 to 20. We'll split it into 2. One group will work in the shop with some of our youth boat building staff, and the other half will be out on the water. Or, as you may know, in April it's sometimes a little tough to get out on Saratoga Passage in small boats. So we do other maritime history-related programming in the woods. One of the great programs we do is called Boat Builders Forest, where it's sort of a nature. It's kind of, if you think of a nature walk with a little bit of history of the logging era, as well as some practical applications of mathematics, far as and geometry, as far as measuring trees and learn, as well as learning about the different uses and species of trees and things like that.
Is that for local school kids that take that?
We've done it for local school kids.
Or is that a class people sign up for? How does that work?
In the past, in the winter, we've just done it on a walk-up basis for families that are staying in the park. We do it as a field trip with local schools or schools from from Seattle or Bellingham that come down for the day. And we do a number of other field trips in the spring, and basically that April through mid-June period. We do several others when we can get out on the water, field trips like the rowboat obstacle course. And so it's sort of teaching young people how to row as a team and maneuver through sort of maze of buoys and stuff like that. But we're looking to develop some other programs this winter related to, but for both Seattle and Camano Island, that highlight the commercial fishing history of Puget Sound. And
tell me about the boat rentals over here. What's available, Andrew?
So we rent a number of different types of boats: rowboats, motorboats, sailboats, and kayaks. Our kayaks are mainly all double pygmy, double ospreys that were built by volunteers here about 3.5 years ago, right when I started. The rowboats, we've got a wide variety of rowboats, including a handful of replicas of the original 1935 fleet built by Burton Eddie Johnson. But the mainstay of our rowboat fleet are, I think he calls them the Heather Skiff, but they're built by Rich Colwyn.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Who lives here on the island for about, in preparation, in the lead up to opening CAMA, he had run a bunch of workshops for us, adult workshops, building both replicas and original boats to his design to round out the fleet for when we open. And so there's the series of,
they're called Heidi skiffs, right?
Heidi skiffs, I think, are the smaller ones.
They are. Okay.
He's named them after his daughters. So I think
is that
he's got 2 or 3 daughters. So there's the Heidi skiff, which I think is the 12-foot, and then there's a
Heather skiff also.
A Heather skiff.
Okay.
And there was, I think, one other, but there's 16, and the ones we use are 14 to 16 feet, and you couldn't ask for a better suited boat for both the water here as well as our main customers, which are
they're very stable because they're flat bottom, a little bit of rocker to them. They're just not going anywhere.
Young families and people with nervous new boaters feel real comfortable in them. And I feel comfortable. I've rowed them in 4-foot seas out here.
Really?
Not broken a sweat. So
Cool.
they're just great. But we also have a handful of replicas of truly historic designs. We've got a flat stern Davis boat that is a motorboat that we rent here, and it's a great story. The Davis brothers from Metlakatla, Alaska, building these fantastic boats for our sort of inside waters. The Willapa Bay, one of our other rowboats is a Willapa Bay. Actually, it's a shoalwater bay dinghy, but which is now called Willapa Bay. But it was an old boat that Rich and Dick Wagner took the lines off of. They found, in the weeds down on Willapa Bay, and they took.
Oh, really?
And it's a really cool little pea pod.
Cool.
Most people from the east will come in and say that looks like a pea pod. Well, I guess so, but it's a Willapa Bay. It's a shoalwater bay dinghy.
Is that a double ender?
Yeah, true double ender. That's just a sweet little boat. And then our sailboat fleet, the vast majority of it is the good old San Francisco Pelican, which is called the ugliest boat on the water. But I challenge anybody to find a 12-foot boat that can hold 4 adults and they sail it safely and in anything. Puget Sound can.
It's a pram bow boat, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Were those built by Smith Brothers up here?
All 3 of ours were built by the Smith brothers
Up on Samish Island?
Yeah. In fact, I think someone told me we might have Fred Smith's, the one he had built for himself.
Really?
We've done a lot of maintenance on them over the years, and so I need to figure that out and see which one that is. But they're great. The sailboats are the only boats we require some previous experience with. You just need to be able to pass a simple checkout, so that we can tell that you're going to be able to sail the boat safely, as well as get the boat back to us somewhere near us.
Okay. And you've got crab pots available.
Oh yeah.
People want to crab, and if people want to fish, they can bring their own gear and fish out here.
And it's there's great bottom fishing. There's fantastic crabbing here, and right now should be some silver still running, and then every other year there's a great place to fish for pink salmon, and there's nothing like catching a pink salmon from a traditional boat for the full aesthetic experience, or a king salmon in the fall for that matter.
Very cool. So John, what as you kind of take over here, what do you see for the next couple of years going on here?
Well, it's nothing like having a fresh view of a place, and I think the center has some kind of reputation out there that people may think we're a private club, or they're not really sure sometimes what Center for Wooden Boats is. And I saw something that as I was going through documents, just learning more about the culture here, as I saw a quote, I don't know if it's Dick's or whose it is, but it said, it's not about boats, it's about the people in them, or something along those lines. And so I'm real interested in that concept of, since I came to work here, I always kind of looked at this place as like a human sanctuary or something. So my goal is just to get more people in here and get them just to fall in love with the place, and then start introducing them to the boats and boating, and teach some appreciation for the old wooden boats. And a lot of people still don't get why we would be interested in that, but it's like being interested in a fine sculpture, or fine wine, or fine art form. It does something good for all of us, and so that's my first goal is just to try to draw more people, more winter events, symposiums on Native American history, or boat canoes, or anything that just to bring more people that haven't been here yet. It's kind of my first goal. But I'm also been toying with the idea, talking to Andrew and other people about marketing things that people want in this day and age. And if they don't get wood boats yet, market something that they do like. One example would be people, we see them out here come spend the weekend in the cabins, and they bring their paddle boards with them. You'll see 5 or 6 paddle boards. Well, I was talking to Andrew and Rich and several others, and Rich Cullen that built the Heidi skiffs. He says, "Oh yeah, I got plans for that. I can get plans, and we can build wood ones." And so I want to sample or market test just some wood things that people might be more attracted to. If they're afraid of going sailing, maybe they'll start with a paddleboard, and then they'll say, well, yeah, you know, you see them out there.
Paddleboard and a wetsuit, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, they've been out there on the hot days.
Really?
So, yeah.
Those are pretty amazing craft.
Yeah.
You can buy kits for them, too. So
yeah. So I'm still on the learning curve on how this operation works, but I've been totally impressed with the people that are working here. We've got a great location, great product, great people, and we just need to advertise a little bit more. One of my pet projects, I think, is trying to deal more with people that live just across Saratoga Passage on Whidbey Island. And there was a gentleman the other day that came over. His family had a resort just within view of CAMA Beach State Park back in the old days, and so he came over and introduced himself. And so there's all these links that we have across Saratoga Passage that notoriously Camino Island doesn't really connect that well over to the other side. But nothing like having a boathouse and boats, and there's people over there that have boats and marinas. And so I'm hoping to get more interest from Whidbey Island, have this their place as well. Just like in the old days. I mean, we had the Mosquito Fleet that made several stops here on Camino Island, down at the Port of Mabana, and probably here, and Utsalati, and so it's recreating that piece of history. Just makes total sense to me, and it's always been a pet project in the back of my head that I'd like to see more marine linkage between Camino and Whidbey Island.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, John, I'm a little jealous you got the job and I didn't.
Yeah.
Although I had no chance, but it sure sounds like fun.
Oh, it's a dream job. Yeah. Oh, I can't believe I landed.
You get paid to do this, really?
Yeah.
That's really cool. Really cool. So if people want to get more information, how do they do that online, or is there a phone number to call?
Yeah, CWB, Center for Wooden Boats, abbreviated, CWB.org is a good place to go. And CAMA Beach State Park, if you search that online, there's a website. We do all our reservations here at the park, here on site, so people can just call up.
Which is different than the other state parks in Washington.
Yeah.
Sort of, because you got to go through that. Whatever. So okay. Yeah. What's that phone number, John?
It's area code 360-387-1550, and I'm going to double check that because
that's right.
Is that right? Yeah, that gets you into the office for CAMA Beach State Park.
Cool.
And there's staff there from 9 to 5 to take care of you.
Very good. We're going to wrap it up here, but I just wanted to ask John if you have any parting comments for people listening.
Just invite everybody to come on down. We're here Monday through or 7 days a week. The park's open all year round. I'm usually on the park either working for state parks or for Center for Wooden Boats just about every day. So if you stop at the Welcome Center, ask for John Dean, I'll give you a tour of the place.
Okay, very good. How about you, Andrew? Anything else you want to say?
Really, the best way to find out more about CAMA Beach and Center for Wooden Boats is just to come on down, and take a look around the park, walk on the trails, or come down to the boathouse and find one of our volunteers or staff, like John or some of our other staff members, and ask questions. And if it's calm, we'll get you out on the water.
Very good. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for your time today. Appreciate it.
It was fun.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much to John and Andrew for doing that interview. I just kind of called John on the spur of the moment Friday and got the interview set up for Monday. And it's a beautiful spot at CAMA Beach. If you can ever make it down there, you got to get down there and rent a boat and go out in Puget Sound. It's really a cool spot. All these cabins sitting there that you can rent. This place basically looks like it did in the 30s and 40s. And it's just a fabulous place. So head on down there if you can. Next week, I will probably play the interview with Lynn and Larry Pardee. And by the way, next week will be the 52nd episode. Will be the first anniversary of Hooked on Wooden Boats. Wow, 52. I can't believe I've made it this far. But, you know, when you're having so much fun doing something, it's kind of hard to stop. I mean, this is really fun stuff. And as I've mentioned before, I really want to turn this into an income-producing show so that I can do this full-time. I would just love to travel, interview people, take photographs and write about it and that sort of thing. And by the way, I received my first check of income since I started this show a year ago. I got a $23 check from Amazon. It's not very much, but it's a start. It's pretty exciting to have some money automatically deposited to my checking account, and that's for purchases that people made from Amazon through my website. So if you'd like to support the show and you like what I'm doing, go to my website homepage, and there's a big banner for Amazon on the right. If you click that, you purchase anything from Amazon, I get paid 4%. Also, there's a banner on my site for Jamestown Distributors, which sells marine and boat building supplies. They have great prices, great service. I've purchased from them myself. If you buy there, I get paid 8%, which is pretty cool. I've also have a store on my website where you can buy merchandise like mugs, water bottles, t-shirts, and hats with the Hooked on Wooden Boats logo. And to get to that, you would go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/store. Or if you go to my homepage, on the top menu, there's a selection there for store, and you click on that, it'll take you to the store. I get paid a little bit for that. So I would love it if you support me if you feel like it. I hope you're having a great week, and I hope to see you in Port Townsend. I will be there all weekend. Please introduce yourself. I'd love to meet some new people. I'm going to be taking photos, doing interviews. I'm going to be on top of my game. I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll be seeing a lot of people that I've interviewed over the last year. I've done, in 52 episodes, I've probably done a total of 60 to 70 interviews or with different people, which is pretty cool. So I'm really looking forward to it. So come up and introduce yourself, and let's talk about wooden boats and have some fun. I just wanted to insert a little addendum here real quick that, as I mentioned, next week is the first anniversary of Hooked on Wooden Boats, and we're going to be doing some special fun stuff, so you want to be sure and tune in for that, okay? Anyway, keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan, over and out. Have a great week.